Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Jackson, Attorney General for North Carolina. I'm joined by Alan Wilson, Attorney General for South Carolina. Chief Patterson, you all know her, and her Chief Deputy, Ryan Butler. My thanks to all of them, especially Chief Patterson, for hosting us here. We appreciate you very much.
Yes, sir.
We're here to discuss a couple of things with respect to the fentanyl epidemic, specifically with respect to fentanyl money laundering. About a year ago, I stood nearby here with General Wilson, and we announced an effort that we were going to undertake in combination with some other AGs from across the country, a bipartisan effort. The basic idea is a huge part of the fentanyl epidemic is propped up with money laundering. We estimate that it is to the tune of about $100 million a week. This is an enormous amount of money. And if you want to tackle the fentanyl epidemic, you have to go after the money. So we looked at where this money was flowing, and the evidence was pretty clear that one of the main places where fentanyl money laundering was occurring was in an app called WeChat. WeChat is owned by a Chinese company called Tencent. So we joined forces to publicly tell them that they had 30 days to come meet with us and to work on a series of ways that they could improve their responsiveness to law enforcement and their investigations. And WeChat said yes to that invitation, I think wisely. And we were able to announce recently, after many months of work, that we secured a number of agreements with WeChat to be more responsive to law enforcement, to be more proactive in making their encrypted spaces hostile to fentanyl money laundering, and to escalating emergency requests from law enforcement and turning those around inside of 48 hours, which is very important when it comes to investigatory contexts. That's the good news. The bad news is that Tencent also owns a company called Weixin. This is also an encrypted messaging platform. And this is also a very popular platform for fentanyl money laundering. Tencent owns both WeChat and Weixin. They are essentially sister apps. The difference between the two is that WeChat has an international presence that is more subject to our laws. Weixin does not. In order to register for use of Weixin, you need a phone number from mainland China, but you don't need to be in mainland China to use the app. This is why it has been able to be used so effectively and insidiously for the money laundering of fentanyl proceeds. We have reached the end of our jurisdiction with respect to what we can do with Weixin. So today, we are escalating our requests. We are asking the President and the federal government to make this a national security priority. The President has already spoken at length about his belief in tackling fentanyl and has taken really positive steps in that direction. We appreciate that. We believe this deserves to be among those steps. Of all the things the President is negotiating with China, we believe that this deserves to be in the top priority. No illusions that this is the type of thing that can be handled overnight. This is going to be a major project, but we have been working for the last year with respect to WeChat, and we saw a major return on investment of our time. So we are suggesting that this become a national security priority because the President is in the position to pull a lever that jurisdictionally, frankly, we are not in a position to pull. I'm going to turn it over to General Wilson now. He's not just South Carolina Attorney General. He's also a member of the National Guard down there, holding the rank of colonel. Has been in for about 30 years. And he and I see, as neighbor states, the shared devastation from the fentanyl epidemic that happens downstream of all of the money laundering that enables it. I know our state is losing people every single day to the fentanyl epidemic. South Carolina is losing people every single day. So we're not just shared in running offense on this problem, we are shared in the grief that is created when this problem is allowed to persist. And on that note, General Wilson.
Thank you, General Jackson. Appreciate you so much. I want to thank everyone for being here today. General Jackson did an excellent job of kind of framing the issue for all of you as it relates to what WeChat is as an application, how it is being used by those trying to engage in illicit drug trafficking, especially the fentanyl trafficking issue. When I look at this, and by the way, I appreciate the compliment, he is also a member of the National Guard here in North Carolina and wears the uniform as a major in the North Carolina National Guard. And so people who wear the uniform see things through multiple lenses. Obviously, as attorneys general and as the chief legal officers and prosecutors of our respective states, we see this as a public safety issue. We also see this as a public health issue. But as members of the National Guard and the armed forces who wear the uniform, we also see this as a national security issue. Now, at the state level, with local law enforcement and state law enforcement, we are able to use the tools and resources available to us by our respective states to work together with local law enforcement and state law enforcement agencies. We are also willing to liaise and collaborate and cooperate with our federal partners when it comes to public health and public safety. In South Carolina, back in early 2024, the very first state grand jury case we had that year dealt with Mexican drug cartels operating drug trafficking operations in South Carolina, and there was one particular state grand jury case that was called Devil in Disguise. That was its code name. This case involved us indicting through multiple jurisdictions in the upstate of South Carolina 64 defendants. Within this one narrative, there were 6 fentanyl-related deaths. In that one case alone, we seized enough fentanyl to kill 500,000 people in our respective states. All of this, and according to my local law enforcement sources as well as our prosecutors, nearly all of, if not all of this, nearly all of the fentanyl that was coming into our state, and I would say North Carolina as well, was done by the Mexican drug cartels in collaboration with Chinese labs being run south of the border. And so these drugs are being poured into the United States, and they're being aided in large part by Chinese-owned companies that own applications like WeChat and their Chinese counterparts, which we can't get to. And they're using these peer-to-peer apps to also transfer and launder money that aids in the transfer of these illicit narcotics into our respective states. That one case right there, 64 defendants, 6 fentanyl-related deaths, enough fentanyl to kill 500,000 people, was caught in just one case. But that is just one case. When you look at the public health component of this, in 2023, the South Carolina Department of Public Safety, or Public Health rather, identified that there were 2,157 drug overdose deaths in South Carolina. 1,550 of those were fentanyl related, meaning 72% of the overdose deaths were related to fentanyl. All this is being fed by the illicit drug trafficking trade that is being obviously supported by the Mexican drug cartels, in large part aided by the Chinese government. So for me, this is an existential threat to not only our states, but to the United States of America. As General Jackson said a moment ago, we have exhausted all the resources available to us as attorneys general, as well as our local law enforcement. We need our partners at the federal level. And when I say the federal level, not just federal law enforcement agencies, but at the diplomatic level. We have reached out to the administration to ask them to incorporate this as something that they need to consider when talking to China. China, as a country, is a pacing threat to the safety and welfare of the United States. This is something that I care deeply about. In modern day times, there aren't conventional armies lining up on a battlefield in uniforms under banners and flags that are fighting each other. That may happen at some times, but that is no longer the main way that nation states threaten the public health, welfare, and safety of the United States. They engage what we call gray zone warfare, or that warfare that exists below the line of open conflict. They use proxy terrorist organizations, they use drones, they also use technology, they use cyber warfare, and they use what would be otherwise normal legal applications like Weixin and like WeChat as social media platforms, but they use those to facilitate a war of drugs on the United States, killing tens of thousands, if not millions, of our citizens in the United States of America, which is why the attorneys general, in a bipartisan fashion, this is not a partisan issue. This is a public health, public safety, and a this is a national security issue. And so we have sent a letter along with a number of our colleagues to the Trump administration to ask the president to obviously recognize that this is an existential threat, that local, state, and even federal law enforcement are no longer adequate to take on the task of dealing with the Chinese government's support of these applications that are being used by illicit drug narco-terrorist organizations. So I want to thank the Attorney General of North Carolina. I want to thank the U.S. Attorney. I want to thank local law enforcement, who you'll hear from in just a few seconds, for their cooperation with our state. We are in this together. If we don't work together to take this out, more and more of our citizenry are going to die. And that's why I'm up here with the Attorney General of North Carolina and your local law enforcement, because it's affecting us equally as bad as it is affecting you. With that, I will step aside and let our new Chief of Police here have the mic.
Thank you, General Wilson, and thank you, General Jackson, as well, for your service to our states, North Carolina and South Carolina, but also to your service for our country. Both Deputy Chief Butler and I are veterans, and we care very much about our country as well. Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for being here today. At CMPD, we have one defined goal, and that is keeping our community safe. Sadly, this goal is under constant threat by the fentanyl epidemic. Fentanyl is not just a drug. It is a poison that undermines the safety of our entire community and demands our most immediate and determined response, as been noted by our speakers. It is important that our community understand that no single agency can take on this challenge alone. Traffickers are operating across county, state, and national lines and borders. Our response must be just as connected, with a relentless determination to dismantle networks that are eroding families by taking lives. What you see today on this stage and up here is a powerful example of collaboration. And since taking this seat, I have talked extensively about working with all our partners to solve the concerns that we have in our community. We are partners coming together from both sides of the aisle to address a national epidemic. As the AGs have noted, we are looking closely at how digital platforms, specifically apps like WeChat and Weixin, are being used to facilitate money laundering and drug operations. We are committed to closing that digital door. CMPD, along with our partners, will continue to hold traffickers accountable while doing everything in our power to protect our neighbors and our residents. Together, we are better equipped and better informed when we work together. Together, we will save lives. And at this time, I'd like to introduce CMPD Deputy Chief Ryan Butler, who oversees our Special Investigations Bureau. He will provide more detail to you on how the fentanyl epidemic is impacting Charlotte and what CMPD is doing to address it.